Hello everyone, I'm Justin and this is everything you need to know before watching Black Panther Wakanda Forever, releasing November 11th. If you end up enjoying this video and want to see more from us, then make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to know anytime we upload a new video. On August 28th, 2020, the world lost a heroic figure and incredibly powerful actor, as it was announced that Chadwick Boseman had passed following a 4-year battle with cancer at the young age of 43. But although he's been gone for a bit over 2 years now, he has in no way been forgotten, as his amazing talent and character lives on through the people he touched and the art we've been lucky enough to bear witness to. With such an iconic part of their cinematic universe no longer present, Marvel Studios has been left with the difficult task of crafting a film that lives up to the standards Boseman set. But before the new film, we've decided to take a look back at Boseman's Black Panther's journey in the MCU so far, as well as the rise of the Kingdom of Wakanda. I suggest if you haven't already though, that you make sure to check out each of the necessary films or series that featured Black Panther and Wakanda, which will be linked in the description, but if you have seen them and are just looking for a quick refresher before the new movie, then you've come to the right place. Millions of years ago, a meteorite made of vibranium, the strongest substance in the universe, struck the continent of Africa, affecting the plant life around it. And when humans began populating Earth, 5 tribes, now known as the Merchant, Border, River, Mining, and Jabari tribes, settled on the affected land, which they called Wakanda. For years, the tribes constantly fought over the valuable land, until one warrior received a vision from the Panther goddess Bast, who led him to the heart-shaped herb, which granted him superhuman abilities and allowed him to become king and the first Black Panther, who the tribes agreed to live under the rule of, outside of the Jabari, who instead isolated themselves in the mountains. The Wakandans then began using the vibranium to become the most technologically advanced nation on Earth, unbeknownst to the rest of the world, as they've chosen to keep themselves isolated using a cloaking field that allowed them to hide in plain sight. Though to ensure they stay hidden and to keep the kingdom safe from the chaos consuming the rest of the world, they would send war dogs on undercover missions to collect intel from across the globe. Wakanda continued to thrive for centuries in their isolation, but one day in 2016, several relief aid workers from the traditionally reclusive Wakanda were killed in Lagos, Nigeria, during a battle between the Avengers and former operatives of Hydra, a neo-Nazi terrorist group originally formed during World War II, by an explosion partially caused by the heroes. This disaster, as well as the destruction caused during the Avengers' previous battles to protect Earth, has led the United Nations to create the Sokovia Accords, a set of legal documents that puts the Avengers under the supervision of an international panel, so they can be used only when that panel deems it necessary. And if the heroes choose not to sign said documents and continue using their superhuman abilities, they'll become fugitives of the law. Eventually, about half the team decides to sign, including Iron Man, War Machine, Black Widow, and the Vision, while the other half, Captain America, Falcon, Hawkeye, and Wanda Maximoff, decide not to, which creates quite a bit of tension between the group. And that tension only continues to rise following the United Nations press conference to ratify the accords, during which King T'Chaka of Wakanda delivered a speech in support of the documents, before he was killed by a bomb planted outside, which the news revealed later to have been the doing of James Bucky Barnes, also known as the Winter Soldier, who was the best friend of Steve Rogers back in the 1940s, before presumably falling to his death during a mission to track down Hydra operatives, who later found and brainwashed him to be used as a superhuman weapon. Following his father's death, T'Chaka's son Prince T'Challa is approached by Natasha Romanoff, who offers her condolences, and T'Challa explains his family's optimistic outlook on death.
In my culture, death is not the end. It's more of a stepping off point.
But he doesn't appear to share that same optimism, and expresses plans of killing Barnes himself. So he eventually tracks him down in Romania and attacks him as the Black Panther. Also having tracked Bucky down though is Captain America, hoping to break his friend of whatever mind control he's under. But he soon learns that he's no longer under anyone's control, and he claims it wasn't him that caused the explosion. So Cap helps Bucky avoid Black Panther until the trio are cornered by police and War Machine, who forces them to stand down and arrests them. The four are then held at a facility in Berlin, with Bucky being kept in a cell while the others are put in separate offices. And soon Bucky's met by a specialist to be evaluated. But during said evaluation, all the electricity in the building and throughout the city completely shuts down, and it's revealed that the man speaking with Bucky isn't actually a specialist, but is Helmut Zemo, who earlier met with former Hydra operative Vasily Karpov at his home and gained possession of a journal containing trigger words for the Winter Soldier before killing him, and later sent an E-bomb to a power grid outside of the city that went off and killed the electricity. With the cameras monitoring them now off, Zemo begins reading the trigger words from inside the journal, and by the time Bucky escapes his containment cell, he's turned into the Winter Soldier, who's then sent on a rampage throughout the building, first encountering and dispatching of Cap and Sam, before also taking out Tony and Nat. He then engages in another short brawl wall with T'Challa, and although T'Challa has control of majority of it, he eventually loses sight of him as Bucky makes his way to a helicopter on the roof. But as he's about to take off, Cap appears and grabs onto the bottom of the chopper, prompting Bucky to try and crash it into him, which ultimately leads to the chopper, Bucky, and Cap all falling into the water below, which Cap then drags an unconscious Bucky out of. With Cap continuing to break the law by protecting a wanted criminal, Stark, Vision, Nat, and Rhodes are given 36 hours to capture him, Sam, and Bucky. So, believing they'll need more help, they recruit T'Challa, as well as a hero Stark has discovered in New York City named Spider-Man. And Stark's team eventually tracks Cap down, intercepting him as he's making his way to a helicopter. But it turns out, Cap had gotten himself some help as well, with Wanda, Clint, and Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, taking part in the ensuing battle on his side. As the battle continues on though, Cap's team recognizes that not all of them will escape. So, following a distraction from Ant-Man in which he grows into a giant, Cap and Bucky begin heading to the Avengers Quinjet, in which Tony's team had arrived, until they're stopped by T'Challa, but luckily for them, he's incapacitated by Natasha, who's decided to put her belief in Cap and allows them to fly off. The remainder of Cap's team, though, is sent to the Raft, an underwater prison created for enhanced individuals, where they're soon met by Stark, who since their battle earlier has learned new information regarding the bombing and Barnes' escape, as the real doctor assigned to speak with Barnes following his arrest was found dead in a hotel, and video footage shows that he was killed by Zemo, who Stark's AI system Friday has discovered was formerly a commander for the Sokovian Armed Forces. Also found in the hotel was a facial prosthesis approximating the appearance of Barnes, so Stark has arrived at the Raft to speak with Sam, who, after admitting he was wrong, he's able to convince to tell him where Cap's going. But as he begins making his way to the abandoned facility that Cap was following Zemo to, he's unknowingly followed by T'Challa, who continues following him, Cap, and Bucky as they search throughout the facility, where he learns of Zemo's true plans of destroying the Avengers from within as he plays video footage of a Winter Soldier mission from 1991, revealed to be the assassination of Tony's parents, Howard and Maria Stark, and this revelation prompts Tony to attack Bucky, which in turn forces Cap to fight against Tony as well. And as the heroes battle, Zemo watches from a distance while listening to a voice message left from his wife, which is revealed to be the last time he'd heard her speak, as he explains to T'Challa, who had managed to find him, that his father, wife, and son were all killed during the Avengers battle in Sokovia against Ultron, so he vowed to tear the team apart. In this moment, T'Challa recognizes how vengeance has consumed each of them, and proclaims he will not allow it to consume him any longer. So Zemo looks to put an end to his own life, but T'Challa prevents him from doing so, claiming the living aren't done with him yet, and he's later imprisoned on the raft. Meanwhile, Cap, Bucky, and Tony's brawl ultimately ends with Cap and Bucky coming out on top and escaping, though they're forced to go into hiding for the foreseeable future, and joining them are Natasha and Sam, with the latter having been broken out of prison by Cap. But Bucky fears that one day he may be forced to transform into the Winter Soldier again, so he takes refuge in Wakanda, as Prince T'Challa has agreed to keep him there in a cryogenic state until they can remove the brainwashing Hydra did to him. Now, having returned home, T'Challa prepares to take part in a ceremony to assume the mantle of king the week following his father's death. Though first, he interrupts his ex-lover Nakia's war dog mission in Nigeria to invite her to his coronation, and she agrees to attend. During said ceremony, he must drink a liquid that strips him of his enhanced abilities, and offer an open challenge for his claim as king in ritual combat. And this challenge is accepted by the leader of the Jabari tribe, M'Baku, as he believes T'Challa is not worthy to assume the throne. So the two engage in a battle that can only end by death or submission. And although M'Baku controls the majority of it, T'Challa manages to lock in a chokehold that forces him to yield. Following his victory, he once again drinks a liquid derived from the heart-shaped herb to restore the powers of the Black Panther. And this process also takes him to the ancestral plane, where he's soon met by the soul of his father, who assures him he'll do just fine without him. Meanwhile, in London, England, at the Museum of Great Britain, a man named Eric Stevens is seen admiring the historic artifacts within their African exhibit as the museum's director explains their history. But it turns out her facts on one particular artifact are false, since he knows it actually came from Wakanda and is made of vibranium. The woman then suddenly collapses to the floor as her drink had been poisoned, and Eric's partners Lambani and Ulysses Claw then shoot down the museum's security and steal the Wakandan artifact before making their escape, along with Eric's lover Linda. The Wakandans soon learn of the stolen artifact and Claw's plans of selling it to an American buyer in South Korea, as he's been on their radar ever since he stole a batch of their vibranium during an attack on Wakanda Wakanda in 1992. So T'Challa, Nakia, and Okoye, the leader of Wakanda's all-women special forces, the Dora Milaje, make plans to capture him. Before heading out on their mission, T'Challa meets with his younger sister, Shuri, the innovator responsible for creating much of their modern technology, and who reveals she's made an upgraded version of his suit, constructed from nanotechnology that he can mentally command to activate. The suit can also absorb and redistribute kinetic energy, as shown when it absorbs the energy behind T'Challa's first strike and sends him flying on his second attempt. And T'Challa, impressed with the suit, decides to use it during their mission that night, which quickly goes sideways. As it turns out, Claw's buyer is CIA agent Everett Ross, who T'Challa had met in Germany, and who has his own undercover operation going on. Each of their covers are soon blown though, and they're forced into a brawl, inciting a shootout. In the chaos, Claw and his men attempt to escape, so T'Challa follows after them atop a vehicle controlled by Shuri from inside her lab with remote access Kimoyo beads. And the car chase eventually ends with Claw crashing his vehicle, giving T'Challa the opportunity to kill him. But he decides against doing so, with the town civilians watching, and he instead turns him over to Agent Ross. Claw's quickly broken out of Ross's custody though, thanks to a sudden explosion created by Eric Stevens and his partners, who then guns down the room full of agents as they escape, with those gunned down including Agent Ross, who took a shot to the spine while shielding Nakia, so T'Challa transports him to Wakanda to be saved. After turning Ross over to Shuri, T'Challa confronts Wakandan shaman Shuri, the trusted advisor of his father during his run as king, who now offers that same loyalty to T'Challa. As Claw was making his escape earlier, T'Challa had noticed that the man helping him was wearing a necklace that held the same ring passed down to him from his grandfather, and this prompts him to question Shuri about what really happened to his uncle N'Jobu, who his father claimed had just disappeared one day. And Shuri reveals that, while on a war dog assignment in America in 1992, N'Jobu was radicalized by the hardships he saw people of color going through. So, believing Wakanda could take over the rest of the world and rule it the right way, he helped Claw steal vibranium from Wakanda, planning on creating vibranium weapons. But unbeknownst to him, he'd been being watched the whole time by an undercover Shuri, which soon led to T'Chaka arriving to retrieve his brother so he could face the council for his crimes. But before they could return home, a deceived N'Jobu aimed his gun at Shuri, forcing T'Chaka to kill him. Shuri also reveals that during his time in America, N'Jobu had fallen in love with an American woman and had a child, but instead of taking the now fatherless child to Wakanda, they left the boy to find his father dead in their apartment, claiming they had to maintain the lie. And Claw soon learns of Eric's Wakandan origins as well, as just before he and his crew could hop on a plane out of the country, Eric pulls his gun and kills Lambani, before shooting through Linda to hit Claw, who he then kills as well after revealing his own war dog tattoo, given to him by his father. Eric then makes his way to Wakanda, dragging Claw's corpse in with him to the foot of the border tribe's head of security, W'Kabi, who we learned earlier lost his parents during Claw's attack all those years ago, and who's grown frustrated with T'Challa after he failed to capture or kill him. Eric's arrival is soon reported to the others, and a now awakened Everett Ross explains that, after graduating from MIT, Eric Stevens, later nicknamed Killmonger, joined the Navy SEALs and went straight to Afghanistan, where he racked up the highest count of confirmed kills in his unit, each of which, as he showed Claw earlier, he tallied by branding his skin. With everything he's learned about Eric, T'Challa decides to bring him before the council, to whom he reveals himself to be the son of Prince N'Jobu in Jedaka, before exercising his blood right and challenging T'Challa for the mantles of King and Black Panther, which he accepts. So T'Challa is once again stripped of his powers and battles against Killmonger. But the battle doesn't go as he expected, with Killmonger gaining full control and landing multiple slashes. But just before he can kill T'Challa, Shuri intervenes and offers himself up instead, since he was the cause of N'Jobu's death. And Killmonger decides to kill him and T'Challa, winning the battle by lifting the ladder up and throwing him over the waterfall to his presumed death. Now the new king of Wakanda, Killmonger is given the powers of the Black Panther, and is taken to the ancestral plane where he sees the soul of his father in their apartment from when he was a kid. Upon awakening, he orders that the remaining heart-shaped herbs be incinerated, as he doesn't plan on ever relinquishing his positions of power. But just before they're burned, one of them is unknowingly stolen by Nakia, who had entered through a hidden entrance within the walls, as she, Shuri, and T'Challa's mother, Queen Ramonda, don't plan to stick around and live under his rule. Having destroyed their supply of the herb, his next order of business is to give their war dogs planted all across the globe vibranium weapons, that they can then give to the oppressed so they can have the firepower to take over and kill their oppressors. Okoye attempts to prevent this from happening, explaining Wakanda only fights when absolutely necessary. But W'Kabi, who also turns out to be her lover, believes that it's only a matter of time before the rest of the world catches up to them, and that he'd rather be the conquerors than the conquered, displaying his loyalty to Killmonger. Meanwhile, Shuri, Ramonda, and Nakia, who also brought along Agent Ross, have begun traveling to Jabari Land, hoping to gain their help. And once there, Nakia offers up the heart-shaped herb to M'Baku, preferring he be king than Killmonger. But instead, M'Baku reveals that the Jabari have actually found and been looking after a still alive but comatose T'Challa, who they then feed the herb, which once again takes him to the ancestral plane. There, he's met by his father, who says it's time for them to reunite, but T'Challa instead criticizes him for abandoning Eric, and allowing the fear of their discovery to stop them from doing what's right, and that now he must return home to take the mantle back and rid Wakanda of the monster they created. So T'Challa awakens with his power restored, and with M'Baku and the Jabari army by his side, he, Shuri, and Nakia return to Wakanda, just as Killmonger's begun sending ships to supply their war dogs with weapons. The Dora Milaje also battle on T'Challa's side against Killmonger's Wakandan army, while Ross shoots down their ships from inside Shuri's lab using the Kamoyo beads, and eventually the Jabari and Dora Milaje manage to force W'Kabi and his army to surrender, as the war boils down to just T'Challa and Killmonger battling within the Great Mount, the mine in which they extract their vibranium. To rid Killmonger of his suit's protection, although it'll destabilize his as well, T'Challa orders Shuri to turn on the mine's maglev train, a magnetic levitation train used to carry vibranium at high speed, with the use of sonic stabilizers that disables the vibranium momentarily. As their battle continues on though, it looks like Killmonger may send T'Challa falling to his death, but instead, T'Challa is able to counter and land the fatal stab. Despite Killmonger's cruelty, T'Challa chooses to show him mercy and helps him fulfill his childhood wish to watch the sunset in Wakanda, before offering to heal him, but he declines.
Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.
Following his victory, T'Challa decides Wakanda can no longer live in isolation, and buys the apartment building in which T'Chaka had killed Njobu, so it can be rebuilt into the first Wakandan International Outreach Center, which Nakia, who he's reignited his relationship with, will look after, before he then holds a press conference in front of the United Nations to reveal Wakanda's resources. And it's not too long before Wakanda is called upon for help, as 2 years later, in 2018, Captain America returns to the kingdom, along with Sam, Natasha, Bruce Banner aka the Hulk, Rhodey, Wanda, and a wounded Vision, who had sustained his injury following an attack from a member of the Black Order, the loyal army of the Mad Titan Thanos, one of the galaxy's most powerful beings on a quest to collect the 6 immensely powerful Infinity Stones, with the objective of using them to bring stability to the universe by wiping out half of all life, as he believes its massive population will inevitably cause it to perish. One of the aforementioned Infinity Stones, that being the Mind Stone, is currently embedded into the forehead of Vision, hence why he was nearly fatally attacked by Thanos' army. But luckily, Cap and the others returned soon enough to protect him, and have now arrived in Wakanda, hoping their technology will allow them to remove the stone from Vision's head without killing him. As Shuri attempts to take care of that, T'Challa gathers the heroes, the Dora Milaje, the Border and Jabari tribes, and Wakanda's royal guard, and his army is soon met at the border of Wakanda's cloaking field by 2 of the children of Thanos, Cull Obsidian and Proxima Midnight, who then send their army of Outriders, a mindless alien species, to attack them. And while most of the creatures are unable to get past the force field, some are able to squeeze through, though they're quickly put down. So the creatures then look to enter through the back, closer to the unguarded Vision, forcing T'Challa to open a portion of the barrier to keep the battle in front of them. And this works for a while, but eventually it looks like the numbers advantage is no longer in their favor, as the creatures overpower the heroes. But luckily, they're then joined in their battle by Thor, the god of thunder, making his return to Earth after being off-world for several years, along with Rocket Raccoon and Groot, and the heroes regain control. So the Black Order sends in giant bladed vehicles called Threshers, which forces the heroes to fall back. But once again, the heroes regain the advantage after Wanda, who had been waiting beside Vision so that she could destroy the stone once the removal was completed, since she's the only one with the power to do so, enters the battlefield and destroys them. But her leaving Vision's side gives another of the children of Thanos, Corvus Glaive, an opening to infiltrate their lab, though he's promptly sent flying out of it by Vision, still one with the stone. Glaive maintains control in their brawl though, and impales Vision with his sword once again. But before he can retrieve the stone, Cap blindsides him, giving Vision the opening to fatally impale Glaive. Wanda also manages to kill Proxima Midnight, while Bruce Banner, battling from inside the Hulkbuster Iron Man suit, kills Cull Obsidian. But these victories soon prove to be insignificant, with Thanos finally making his arrival on Earth, having collected the 5 other Infinity Stones, which he now uses to easily take out the heroes as he makes his way towards Vision, who he kills to collect the 6th and final stone. And now, with the power of the 6 stones, Thanos does indeed wipe out half of all life, including T'Challa, half of Wakanda's population, and about half of the Avengers, with a single snap of his fingers before escaping from Earth. 3 weeks after the snap, the remaining Avengers find Thanos in retirement on a faraway planet, and after learning he had used the stones to destroy the stones, Thor beheads him. So those blips remain lost for the next 5 years, until 2023, when the Avengers managed to figure out a way to travel through time to collect the Infinity Stones from past timelines, which they then used to successfully bring back everyone that was lost. But as they were collecting the stones, a 2014 variant of Thanos learned of their plans and followed them, along with his army, back to their timeline, prompting a huge battle that comes to an end when Iron Man gets hold of and uses the power of the stones to wipe out Thanos and his army, sacrificing himself in the process. And that was everything you need to know before watching Black Panther Wakanda Forever. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And let us know in the comments below what you're most looking forward to seeing in the new film. Also, if you want to see more content like this, then click the second link in the description for our Marvel playlist, featuring various recaps, rankings, and explanations of other MCU projects. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.